Hi guys, this is Jason Haynes here, and this is a tutorial about drawing cities. And I know for sure that there are many artists that I talk to, and just like me, they hate drawing backgrounds. You would hear it all the time that I love drawing characters, and I hate drawing backgrounds. And mainly that's because there's cities and it's structured and it's not open-ended and free form like drawing characters. But I have been trying to develop a way of trying to do backgrounds in a fast way where I don't have to worry about the form that many tutorials talk about, and figuring out the form and the back of the form, even if you're not drawing the back of the form. And it could just be cumbersome on your mind and very confusing at times. And if you're like me, you just want to get straight to your illustration and drawing these fantastic backgrounds for your comic, or just a poster, or some sort of editorial cartoon, or whatever avenue you want to go into. So this method I found worked for me, and hopefully it will work for you just as well as it did for me. So first I want to talk about basic shapes. Now the method that I'll be using, I'm not sure what I will call it as yet. I've definitely never seen anyone do it like this, or at least have the thought process of doing backgrounds like this. So I'll just say that it's the basic shape method instead of basic form method. So the what I would like to talk about is how children draw backgrounds, or if you ever seen a child illustrate something, whereas they have where am I? Where they have a ground plane, maybe. Let's draw that a little lower. They have a ground plane, and they have their buildings. And it would pretty much look like this. They draw their buildings, and then they'll go in and have their windows. Of course, this is not by any means a great illustration. As I said, it is how a child draws. And they go in and they do a bit more windows, and they just fill it up with windows. Now already those are starting to look like buildings. Those are actual buildings, and there's no doubt in your mind that that's buildings. But look how simple they are, and the child didn't worry about what form they are. All he knew is that these buildings, they're rectangles with windows, and that's the basic shape. That's the basic shape of buildings for the most part. A rectangle with some little small rectangles at each side, and how we're going to be doing our backgrounds. Sounds strange? Okay, well, let's go ahead and see how this is done. All right. Now, we know that to do our backgrounds professionally, that we have to know a bit about perspective, and this is by no means a perspective tutorial. There are many tutorials on YouTube all over the place on perspective, so I'll try not to get into that. But what I want to get into is how to do your backgrounds quickly, and so that you can just focus on your illustration and not be worried too much with a lot of technical aspects. But we shall use perspective in this method, because that's just what professional artists do, and your backgrounds definitely wouldn't look right and believable in a sense without perspective. So what we're going to do is start with our perspective lines. I'm going to do 2-point perspective. So we'll just start with our perspective lines here. I'll just do some, put some, have some random placements for some of these lines. Okay, I'll just create some other lines and some other, from our vanishing points here. Okay, so what you see here is not anything different from what you would see in, from other tutorials, and in terms of starting a city or cityscape, or definitely anything technical with buildings and structures, because you definitely need these kind of lines in order to make sure that your buildings are converging to the right points, to give the illusion of perspective and to give the illusion of depth. So we definitely need these lines, and here's what we have. Now let's lighten that a bit and get a new layer. There we go. Alright, now we can start doing our illustration. And remember, we said that kids do these kind of drawings where they just focus on what the basic shape is. That's what we're going to do here, but we're going to use perspective to build our basic shapes, or build our basic shapes, our flat shapes, in perspective. So we said our buildings were rectangles, and that's how we're going to construct them. So okay, and I'm going to create another building. Make sure we have, some varying varying heights, for our structures. As you can see, these are all rectangles drawn in perspective, but they're all flat rectangles nonetheless. We're not worrying about the entire form of the building. We're not trying to draw the whole building as yet. We're just focusing on one side of the building, and this is a good start for any sort of structural backgrounds that you may be doing. It could be a city, it could be the interior of a room, could be a site of a house, maybe, and and we could start it just like this, by doing those basic shapes in perspective. Now as you can see here, we just have this one line of flat rectangles, which, if you remember from the kids' drawing, was just the bunch of buildings together. It's a terrible drawing. Yeah, just the bunch of buildings lined up. Now, all we did was take that very same shape and converge it into perspective. Get it? So, now you want to know, okay, well, that's all fine. Now, how am I going to make sure that these have depth, and how do I get that really nice detailed city that I see on these wonderful illustrations? Well, this is why this method is so great, because even before you start adding detail to one building, you can just focus on all the easy parts, which is just creating your flat rectangles or flat shapes in perspective, and you don't have to be bothered about anything else. So we know that there's some buildings behind all of these front buildings, and going back into perspective, and you see them in the distance and what's not. So all you have to do, all that is that they're on another plane, or just further back to one of these lines here. And all we have to do is just continue creating our rectangles. But what we're going to do is create our rectangles more randomly here. And we know they're going to be behind, so when I create my depth for these buildings, which is going to be next, I just stop this line here so that I don't have to erase it later. It's just something I prefer. But here we're adding overlap to our city, and just creating lots of overlapping rectangles, or rectangles that seem to be behind the other rectangles. And look, you're already starting to build this city street. Let's erase some of this. Just get rid of some of these lines that here. Just get in a little closer. Get rid of that, those extra perspective lines that we've been getting. Okay. See how easy this was? Just did a bunch of flat rectangles, and we overlap them. And that created a basis for the depth that we're going to do later on, the illusion of depth. Now, since we're doing this in two-point perspective, we also have to converge the other side of our buildings to our next perspective point. And the way we do that is exactly the same way as we did it with our first site. But did you notice what happened here with this first building? What I did was as simple as creating another rectangle on the other side. That's all it is, just another rectangle on the other side. So that same kid's drawing could have also been this side as well. You see, it could also have been this side of the building. So it just doesn't matter so much where you start from. It matches up. And let's continue drawing some more buildings. Second building. Let's get a third one. And notice it doesn't matter which side you start from to get your shapes. As long as you get, you just focus on one side and you just get your shapes right on one side without bothering about any forms or anything, then you'll be on your way to creating great backgrounds. Now we do the same thing that we did before. We create some overlap, maybe. Overlapping rectangles, and somewhere in the middle we will have to. The time is moving fast here, but we're making pretty good time still for building our background. Now it looks like we're getting somewhere. We haven't done any details yet, but at least it looks like we are creating a city already. Let's just erase some of those perspective lines here. Just get rid of those confusing perspective lines that we don't need anymore, because we've got our structures that we use them for. We already have them in, so don't need those perspective lines anymore. Okay, so let's see how we can add some depth. Now, as the same way you did with the first building here, you add depth by carrying the next side of your rectangle, or pretty much creating another rectangle, which we wouldn't see, but just for example, here would be your next side of the building. Of course, you're not going to see that behind this building, so we're just going to erase, you know, what we don't need here. Now, that's your second building. Now, I'm using Manga Studio EX. I think this is EX5, and what this has a perspective tool, which I can't show for the sake of time on this video, but has a perspective tool of where you can actually take your lines and let me just click on the brush density and lighten this as well. So carry up the density just a little bit more. Right, so it has a perspective tool which you can use to guide your lines. But for the sake of this tutorial, by any chance that you will be doing this on paper or in another program like Photoshop, I did the perspective manually, so you can see you can do it in any program you'd like. It doesn't matter which program you use. Okay, I'm just creating those perspective lines. Those perspective lines that are going to make the depth for our city. And okay, then we have all of it. Let's create some cutoff points for our buildings here. So cut off our buildings at a certain point. Buildings are not going to be that that much longer, and you can have them longer. It actually doesn't matter so much, just as long as you have what you want. Erase those confusing perspective lines again, and I'm doing this digitally. I'm not sure I'm the most comfortable with working digitally, even though I have been working digitally for a number of years. I still prefer to work on paper, but for sometimes a job requires more or less for some of these speedier things that a computer could do, then I have to work digitally for that. And the computer and working digitally does have its advantages, but for this sort of thing and control, and I'm not using a Cintiq or anything, I kind of like to work on paper, but for the purpose of this tutorial as well, digital is the best to work. So here you see that I created, these shapes for my buildings, and I already have a functioning city, which just looks like a bunch of boxes right now, but here's the next great thing about this method, or about the entire technique of doing this city. This is what I would call separation for detail. Whereas we create sections for a detail, and then have then create our detail within each one of those sections. Because when you think about it, buildings are they're pretty even set. They were built by humans with who calculated things and made sure that everything was even, so the buildings don't fall and what's not, and make sure that things are uniform. We as humans like to have things uniform, and with a bit of visible order. So now we're going to create some windows, because they're not buildings without windows, right? I'll just have the windows done on this first building here, and what I'm going to do is just carry back my density down on my brush. Here now, my brightness of my perspective lines again. Okay, here we go again. Let's over here and let's make sure we got a clear view. Okay, so we're gonna divide our building. Oops, I'm on the wrong layer. Okay, divide our building a bit. I'm not really measuring, so forgive me if it's not accurate, but just for the point of this sample, I'm trying to work fast. So I section off my building horizontally and created some separations, some horizontal separations, and I'm going to go in and just create some vertical separations. Okay, that's half. Still trying to be a bit accurate, at least my perspective. Okay, now we have those. We have 4 sections across and about 7 sections down. Okay, now what this already is already a framework for where you're going to put your windows, and by using these lines as separators, we know each window doesn't go past a certain point. So here we have already one section of where we could put detail, and our detail is quite frankly going to be our windows. Now we know windows don't touch, so what we're going to do is fatten or expand our sections. I'm going to just, you can make them as wide as you want. I'm going to just make them a couple millimeters apart. Oops. Okay. And let's create a kind of roof section for this first set of windows. Okay, you know, what we have here is our first window, our first section for a window that we can work with. That's one window, and maybe we can do some more sections here. Maybe we can expand the rest of the lines here. Expand our separations. Oops. Now, there's really no shortcuts around doing backgrounds. The only shortcut is that, you know, is your way of thinking and what you choose to do first. And really, if you stick to just doing your basic shapes first, then it can really speed up the time you take to do backgrounds, you know, as tedious as they are. So let's create a bit of a separation underneath the windows for maybe some floor space or some roofing space. It's going to be like in between each level of the building. Let's do our next set of windows here. Okay, this is looking good. A little bit of floor space. And one more set of windows here. Okay, and here I can add whatever detail I like, you know. Maybe I have some ledges that that I want to build out, and I do this the same way as if I was creating a building on its own again. Let's have maybe it's building out a ledge like that. Let's make that a little. Let's make that darker so we can see where we're going with this. So here I have a ledge built out, and each one of our usually you wouldn't want whatever extruding ledgings have any be built out in order to line up with things that are on a different plane altogether, because it creates tangents and could confuse the eye a bit. So usually you'd want to not have it line up, maybe bring it out a little bit. This is just laziness on my part, but just getting this erase a bit. Right, so it's on a different plane because it doesn't line up. Just as these buildings, their edges don't line up with the edges of the other buildings. It'll just look flat, right? So here we have it. You could continue creating like details like this all day, and just continue. You can go in and take time and detail your buildings, each one of your buildings as you choose, doing whatever little bit of decorations and ornamental stuff that you like to do on your structures. And, creating small details, and remember, don't be afraid to just leave some simple lines and just do some simple lines for detail, and because after depends on the distance of the object that you're going to see, only a certain amount of detail anyway. So you don't have to get too crazy and create every single grout in tiles, all that grout separation in the tiles when it's so far away that all it looks like is a line. No need to do that. Just does what tells the shape best, and you'll be good. Now, this is definitely not a finished illustration, but I hope you did get whatever I was going with this, and hope that it made backgrounds at least a little bit easier for you, and maybe next time we could talk about some more detailing and using reference in order to build a library of details for your buildings and cities. So hope you enjoyed, and see you next time.